you hear me?
The truth is loud is in the silence. In the silence, in the things that you aren't saying, in the things that we don't do. The truth is loud. So I want to remind everybody that this session is being recorded. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to have emotion. You're in a safe space here, right here, and actually you're in a brave space here because you chose to be here, and we thank you. So I'm not going to linger this any longer. I want to introduce you to our facilitators for today, and that is Keanu Wheeler, who you've met, some of you. Kiana is rooted in the belief that relationships and community are central to our liberation. Kiana is a Black woman with extensive experience in anti-racism change efforts. She's an accomplished race relations trainer, skilled in anti-racist data and measurements, systems analysis, group facilitation, anti-racist leadership development, and policy impact analysis. Wearing many hats in her personal life, she is also a spoken word artist, using her art as a platform to generate discussions that imagine a world more humane, just, and free. That is Keanu Wheeler. Darlene Flynn is also one of our moderators for today. Darlene Flynn left Seattle, and boo-hoo, you know I miss you. But she left Seattle to become the director of the Department of Race and Equity for the city of Oakland, California, in October of 2016. There, she is using her broad understanding of municipal government and her work as an original architect of the City of Seattle's Race and Social Justice Initiative to implement the Oakland Race and Equity Mission to intentionally integrate on a citywide basis the principle of fair and just in all the city does to achieve equitable opportunities for all people and communities. Her approach continues to be focused on structural change to advance equitable outcomes for communities impacted by racial disparities. This requires deepening the collective understanding of the impacts of systemic racism on life outcomes and activating advocacy and change action within the city to address barriers to equity embedded in local government. That is Darlene Flynn. Both of these ladies are my friends. I love them to the moon and back, twice around Jupiter, and just take a left at Mars. I love them to death. They're doing this, they signed up to do this free of charge, but I couldn't let them do that. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Everyone open your ears and open your heart. I turn it back over to you. I'm gonna be off video and fielding questions.
So much, Anita. I just also want to say, and Darlene probably hates every time I say this, but we are not where we are in a vacuum. Darlene has been my mentor for as long as I have been in this work. When I tell you, you know, I've been doing this work for 20 years, and that 20 years has been a journey. Like when I was saying that nobody has ever arrived, I just want to say that I started to hang out with these two to dance, and because they have lots of fun. And this is who I became because of them. And so I just want to say thank you to my mentor, Darlene, but I also want to say that it's an example of how you might just think that you were spending time with somebody, but who they become because of you is going to be so necessary. And so that's another reason why you all are here. Thank you, Darlene. So we did a bit of introducing ourselves. Should we go again since it's 11?
How did you want to start, Keanu?
You know, we did tell a little bit about us, but let's talk a little bit about our role.
Okay.
So again, Keanu Wheeler. And when you introduce yourselves, it's okay to use your first name. Again, you all are going to introduce yourself before you answer questions. And Keanu Wheeler, I am here to facilitate with Darlene Flynn. It's so good to work with you again, Darlene. I miss you so much.
It's great to be back.
Do you want to name anything, and then we'll name sort of our facilitator role?
Sure. I'm Darlene Flynn, and my pronouns, we're going to use pronouns today. I'm going to remember to do that. She, her, hers. And we'll be helping you move through the process today, Kiana and I, by facilitating the time and framing some questions for you. And we're going to ask you the thing before answering. Say your name, say your preferred pronouns, and say your racial identity. Sometimes we cannot pick up on all the racial identities, and assumptions can be problematic, but racial identity matters. And we're here to talk about race, so also identify your racial identity when you introduce. As we're going through the process today, please make sure that you speak up and share and take risks, and that you use this brave space fully. And also, for those of us that find it easier to share, like myself, we need to make sure that we share the time and the space, and that sometimes we step back. So it's that both and regulator about participating and stepping back for those who maybe need a little more time or a little less extrovert these conversations. Practice using I statements as opposed to speaking for others. We can slip into generalizations, and sometimes I will, as a trainer, I will generalize about racial dynamics. But to have a deeper conversation, it's good to reflect on our own experience and our own learning in this space. If something triggers you, this can happen when we're talking about race. It happens quite often, actually, because it's not a conversation that we've had enough practice at. And so it's hard for us to not have those buttons pushed sometimes. Some of us have grown pretty thick skin and we're pretty good at it, but that takes a lot of practice for most people. So try to avoid feeling the feelings or getting lost in feelings of defensiveness or upsetness. And instead, what I do is I replace those reactions with curiosity. Curiosity about why I'm reacting the way I'm reacting, and curiosity about what the other person said or did, trying to understand that more deeply. And if I can just move myself from that defensive stance to a curious place, I can move through those emotions more quickly. Emotions come and go anyway, but we want to move through them as quickly as we can. So resist defensiveness to the best of your ability. And if you do feel that maybe you make a mistake, sometimes we realize we've made a mistake after we've said something, or maybe someone calls us in about something we've said or done and pointed out a mistake. That's another place for us to embrace growth. We're on to take responsibility for whatever it was and to commit to learn and to grow from that experience of making a mistake. The way humans evolve, the way we learn, the way we grow is actually as much by learning from our mistakes as it is from learning from our successes. So we need to not be so worried about making a mistake that we don't make the mistake and get the learning. So mistakes welcome, and growth and learning is what we're after. So we can tie those two things together, I think, today. And Kiana and I will do our best to facilitate those moments should they arise. So you won't be on your own. Don't worry about it. But I wanted to mention that up front, just in case anybody's starting to feel a little nervous with all this race talk. So those are the agreements. Those are how we're about our time together today. Does anybody have any questions about all of that? If you do, wave at me. All right, I figured you could observe it pretty easily. Thank you. Back to you, Kiana.
Thank you, Darlene. Exactly, and it's so beautiful to talk about how we actually get to where we need to get to, and that mistakes are okay. Mistakes don't mean that you're a mistake. It means that you made a mistake. It means that we are learning, and we all are on a learning journey. I also want to say that in this panel type discussion, which means that we will provide questions depending on time. We will give 5 to 6 questions and take 2 to 5 responses depending on where we are in time. If you have a desire to respond to something, please raise your hand. We've got folks who will let us know if we miss a hand, or if there is space to jump in, go ahead and do so. I also want to ask folks not to be uncomfortable with silence as people gather their thoughts. It does not mean that we have to jump in, especially if we're people who talk a lot. I talk a lot. We don't have to jump in. Other folks will jump in as they're ready. And then thank you, Darlene, for also noting that we're going to frame the conversation for you, push you a little, help identify the multiple narratives that go with a concept. So if you feel that we are pushing on you or asking you to dig in a little deeper, we are, and it's for the benefit of all. Again, we're modeling what learning looks like. We're modeling what conversation looks like. And thank you for reminding us, Darlene, about pronouns. I did not use my pronoun. I go by she, her, and hers. Part of what that helps us do is how to refer to you. We don't want to misgender anyone. So by you letting folks know your name, your pronouns, and your race, it helps us to not misgender you. It is as well a part of the socialization that upholds white dominant norms, gender is, and so we use them in tandem with race. Thank you, Darlene.
You bet. And I forgot to say that I do identify as Black. I am also biracial, or mixed is what we called it when I was a child. My mother was white, my father was Black. I was raised in Black community, and I'm Black.
Yes.
So, shall we get started? Are we ready?
Let's get started. Can we start with framing? Do you think we framed enough about solidarity versus allyship, or can we go into that?
Well, we could talk about it a little bit more. I could start that. I just think some people like to use the word allyship, or we have historically used the word allyship to describe the relationship that we have when we are fighting to end an oppression that does not impact us. So my allyship activity, my allyship practice is not around race because I'm Black. So my allyship practice is around my areas of social privilege, like being straight or being born and raised in the United States and speaking English as my first language. Those are my allyship areas. There's also an evolving conversation about the word allyship, and some people, particularly people of color, have been questioning whether or not allyship is enough, whether or not allyship says enough. So we've been playing with other words in this race work, and one of the words that I like people to think about is solidarity, because solidarity has a little bit different nuance to it than allyship, and I think stronger, and I think it may be a little bit more clearly action oriented. So when we talk about that, it's the same thing. It's when I stand in solidarity with someone or groups of people who are being impacted by social constructs that oppress them, but those social constructs don't oppress me. So that's how I think about solidarity versus allyship. I'm actually fairly flexible because I've been using them for so long, but I like playing with new ideas. So solidarity. Anything you'd add, Keanu?
What's that?
Is there anything you'd add? I know you think about this too.
Yeah, the only thing that is really coming up for me around solidarity and allyship is the current context of the Black Lives Matter hashtags that we have had to note during this time. And one of the things for me that clearly comes up is we talked a little bit about how our liberation is tied together, but what we failed to talk about is that one of the first things I realized when I was in my allyship areas, again, very similar to Darlene, because I'm straight, I speak English, I'm able-bodied, I have multiple degrees, so education, the ism that comes with education is elitism and things of that nature. And so one of the examples I often use how to remind ourselves that when I first got into this conversation, I thought folks who didn't have what I had wanted that. And that's actually not true, right? And so I'm going to give you an example. We know that in Seattle public schools, kids of color are graduating at about 50%. At about 50%. And what we often talk about in that conversation is closing the achievement gap to white students. Well, white students are graduating at 77%, and I don't think that that's great either, right? So it's not about closing the gap to white normativity. It's about looking at a system and how it might change so we all are at 100%, right? It's not about what you might want that, or I think that you want what I have because the system has privileged me. It's not about that. It's about how do we move this system so that we all have what we need. And that is the first idea is called saviorism. You might have heard of it. And then the second idea is called allyship or accountability or solidarity.
Thanks.
So,
great addition.
So let's jump into some questions. Again, before you answer, name, race, gender, pronoun, and also keep it as we were saying 90 to 120 seconds, so a minute and a half to 2 minutes, if you can. If it gets going to where it's too much time, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, wrap it up.
Right, Darlene, we're gonna do this. Wrap it up. All right. Do you want to field the first one, Darlene?
Sure. We're interested in kicking off today by hearing about what your takeaways or your impressions or your ahas were from the video assignment, the pre-work. We thought we'd warm up by just talking about that. And anyone can volunteer to share on this one.
I see Sean's hand.
Yeah.
I'm Sean, they, them. Can you hear me? Or am I
Yes.
mute? Okay.
Yep.
The biggest thing that I took away from that was a plan of action from Ijeoma. I kept thinking, well, what can I do other than just read about things or, study things? What could I actually do to create change and be a true in solidarity? And what I took away was to, like, when I see racist incidents, to look at the bigger picture and ask questions, see what I could do to change things. She used that example of a teacher who was acting racist towards a child. You find out about that from your kid at school. Go to the school and ask, are they getting sensitivity training? Just try and delve deeper into that and take action rather than just keeping it an isolated incident and being like, well, that's awful. To change that, to take action and kind of look at the bigger system that's causing that. So.
Thank you. Would you like to share your gender pronouns and your racial identity?
Oh, did I not say that?
No, but we'll give you a minute to do that.
White and ethnicity, I want to include that because I empathize a bit, is Jewish. And they, them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sean.
Other takeaways? Tim. Oh, unmute. Hi.
All right. Hello. Hi, I'm Tim White. First of all, the video was extremely powerful. I shared it right away. I don't pretend to even know what it's like for people of color to live your lives. I can only do my best to support and be there. One of the things I took away from that was people of color living their lives every day. Microaggressions are real, and those microaggressions are real even if they're unintended by the people doing it. So that's kind of what I took from it.
And what pronouns do you like, Tim?
I don't really have any pronouns.
No pronouns, just Tim.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And can I also just add, if you are not on the panel, go ahead and turn your video off. When I'm looking for hands, I'm looking through all the videos, and I don't know if some folks are on the panel or not. Thank you. There is a hand I saw.
Oh, Dale? Is that Dale?
Yes. Actually, it's Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay.
White, she, her, and the other pronoun that's female. My big takeaway was that white is the default. I think that that was a new way of wording what I somewhat already knew. Several years ago, I knew that people would say, "Oh, it was a black man. It was a black man. It was." They would, and that kind of rubbed me, and I realized that on my own that before I heard that white is the default, I had recognized that we don't need to know the race. It's just a human, and I didn't have the courage to speak up, but it was good to hear that putting in context that white is the default, and that's not how it ought to be.
It's hard to even imagine the immensity of that fact, too. It permeates everything you can imagine. Yeah, it's very pervasive. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Dale, you wanted to add?
Yes, and then the Dale, he, him, white. I grew up in a conservative family, and it's been an eye-opening experience for me to get where I'm at now, living in Seattle. The thought about the microaggressions that occur to people of color, it hurts my heart. And I want to do what I can to help make difference, and I'm not sure where to go with that. That's one of the reasons why I'm here today, because I want to learn how to be more in solidarity and an ally, and then just an observer, because we all need to be a part of this.
Lots of ideas will emerge for you today. You already heard one, and that is when you see something, say something. Yeah. All right.
Kim has their hand up too. I also wanted to just note for folks who are saying that they're learning that white is the default, that happens the same way with gender, and that's why we need to be just as clear. The default is he in our society, as a patriarchal society, and the way I'm working on it is by the default being they, them. And so if you are not going to, if there's not a pronoun that you use, I will be using they, them for you. If you prefer a different one, please let me know. Kim.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kim, she, her, hers. My identity racially is white. I want to thank the organizers. Thank you for offering this. And one of the standouts for me from Jioma's video was I really appreciated her bringing forth the experience of how the vulnerability on both sides of the conversation when we want to talk about, or when we don't want to talk about race, but we are talking about race, and the experience of I guess I'm more familiar with my own discomforts, but kind of thinking about what it's like for the person of color or the Black person who I'm conversing with, and their experience too, and how the vulnerability there gave me just kind of a more of an experience of what it might be like, and thinking both sides.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's dying to share? If not, there are some follow-up questions that Kiana has.
I see L.A. Horn. You're on mute, I think.
Okay. Hey, my name is Alvin L.A. Horn, widely known as Mr. Horn, since I taught school for a long time, and that's what the kids were to say to me. I wasn't one of those teachers you call me by my first name. And a follow-up to identification when talking about the Black male or the Asian fellow over there. When you have grown up in the world, in America's society, and you have been identified, there's a catch-22 that you can't get the balance out, because sometimes you're very proud to be identified as that Black man, simply because that you have been on the lower rung or look to be on the lower rung of things, and a sense of achievement. And then there's the other side where hey, it's that black guy over there, where you're on the other side of that identification of being black that can anger you, frustrate you, make you feel lower than. And so there's this catch-22 of being proud to be a black man, but on the other side, you don't want to be identified as a black man too because of the negativity that comes along with it. And so you're constantly on this ebb and tide of how do I go through society and feel okay? I mean, we're at a point in time that the person in the highest office refers to us as the blacks. And that's tough to sit there and look at the highest rung of people are looking at you as still here in 2020 as the blacks when I'm born in 1957. So I have seen a lot. I have witnessed a lot of political change. And over the years, and I've gone through the point in time where I was that black kid in the all-white school in the 60s, talking about catching hell. So then I was a lot of negative connotations. And now here I am at 220, still the blacks. It's tough, even though there are times I love being identified as a black male because of achievement and recognition that has not come freely in society.
Tim, did you throw your hand up?
Yes, I just had a comment, which is a experience from myself, and that is I'm married to a woman of color. We have 2 boys, and to comment on what Mr. Horn said, people say, I don't see color. People say that. Well, that's a disservice. I'm speaking to what Mr. Horn said. You should see people for their color, but in that way that they want to be seen, versus it's not necessary when you see a group of people that you could have easily had said that person in the green shirt versus giving their race as a description. So with our 2 kids growing up in the time that they were, and people, I don't see people of color. Well, I want you to see them for who they are, but not in that negative light. It's not always to be shown as you need to describe them. Their color or ethnicity or makeup has no purpose in describing them for any other reason other than a positive light, versus then to demean them as a person in a group. That's all I'm trying to say.
Gotcha.
Thank you. There's a couple hands there's a couple hands that have been raised, and I just want to make sure we get them also. I also want to note and remind folks, and this is not directly to you, Tim. I'm naming this for the group and for folks watching. For discussion panels, we're not going to do the crosstalk like I'm responding to so-and-so's. We're going to speak from ours. And so just reminding folks, this is not just discussion between us, but discussion for all the folks watching, especially as this is being recorded. But there, I think Jen was first, Dr. Christie, and then Michelle. Jen Pearsall.
Hello, thank you so very much for this opportunity. My name is Jen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my race is white. And answering the main takeaway from the video, I had an opportunity to hear Ijeoma speak when she was originally touring with this book, so I heard it then. Kiana, it was at a time, I'm on the board of directors of Seattle Arts and Lectures, so I also started doing equity training with you. And I want to say that my takeaway was everything is about race. Like hearing her say that, it doesn't matter what the moment is, like race is always at play. And when you're white, you have the privilege of not realizing that. And the very first time when Sal brought you all in, I was the person who was arms crossed, like, I'm not racist, this isn't about me, why am I here, we're talking about race, I want to throw up. So I think also hearing and that was about 2 years ago, and so listening to Ijeoma do her same talk, just open to it in a different way, because over the last few years, through a lot of learning, I've been making myself uncomfortable in different ways, and taking baby steps to having those conversations, and realizing when race is at play or racism when, especially amongst white folks, someone may have thought they were saying something that was just funny or in passing. And an example, I received a text yesterday from a person, and it was a meme that I know he didn't think was racist, and it was. And I would normally just respond with like, haha, or something, and just ignored it. And I sent back just a note saying this isn't okay, and here's why. And I know that you're a good person, but that this is offensive and this is leading to where we are at this moment. And I got a note back from him saying, oh, it was a test. I was seeing who my friends who would respond to that. So I thought that was equally uncomfortable. So I just ignored it. I got a note this morning saying, I'm really sorry. I was super uncomfortable and I was embarrassed. And so I made that up, and thank you. And so that was, to me, this was someone who's kind of above me on the social ladder, and it was uncomfortable. So my takeaway from it is everything's about race, and that we just need to keep stepping up and making ourselves uncomfortable.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that this is really that's one of the, I think, most important things in there is people often ask, how do I know that this is about race? It could be about something else. It's like, no, race has always been it. So we can always unpack the racial aspect of it. Thank you for pointing that out. Who did you have next in queue?
Well, I was talking with Anita. This is also for everybody listening. I was talking with Anita in the chat privately. If you are previously already identified on the panel, your video is on and you are ready to answer questions. If you are a listener today and you are not on the panel, there's another panel in August. You can absolutely join that panel, but we've done a lot of work for these, what are like almost 20 folks for this panel. And so just wanting to make sure to keep it to the people in the panel. There's been listeners raising their hands. You can absolutely put your questions in the chat, but we're going to definitely focus on the folks who there were even a lot of discomfort for being on the panel. And so just wanting to honor the fact that those folks have worked through their issues. Thank you. And who was the other person that had their hand up? Michelle, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my ethnicity is Filipino and Chamorro. And that throws everybody off all the time. And that's part of where I come from in regards to the main takeaway from the video is I come from this from a different standpoint. You've probably heard model minority when it comes to Asian people. And so I break that model minority myth because I am not demure, I'm not quiet. I refuse to be silent, and that scares the hell out of a lot of people. And I am unapologetic, but I am tactful and I am empathetic. I am not a black person. I do not know what it feels like to be in black skin, but I do know what it feels like to be in brown skin. So I come from this from a little bit of a different standpoint in that so far as race has always been part of our conversation, and having a certain type of talk with our two boys because people see them before they know them. And so
You're on mute.
Oh.
Sorry, just gotcha.
Okay. I understand from, somewhat from a standpoint of being a mom that has to be always concerned about whether her boys are going to come home for a different reason. My son, as an example, had a girlfriend that lived in Kent, Washington, and she was Thai and Laos. So of course, there is another layer there. Nonetheless, he got pulled over every time because he looked like he could be a troublemaker. If you know Kent, he didn't fit in. And so Unfortunately, I said, hands on the steering wheel, make sure you got all your paperwork. You don't back talk. You, sir, ma'am, don't offer any more than they're asking. And I hated that, have that conversation, but I wanted him to come home. And so her talk about uncomfortableness and racism, and for me, being a brown person in a corporate world, I have to code switch a lot. And that frustrated me because I started in the corporate world in the mid 80s. So you had to have a certain look. You had to talk a certain way. My name is not ethnic. So when they would actually meet me, they were so surprised I spoke so well. And I just wanted to I'm from Stockton, California. You don't want to start with me. Auntie Darlene knows. You don't want to, no, all right, I can have that corporate conversation with you, but you just don't want to, So that's a different takeaway. I loved her conversation, and I love that she had it at Google. So I appreciate that. And so you hear me come up with little things, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Michelle. Kiana, can you define code switch for people? Code switch.
Yeah, definitely. Code switch is not something we value in this. We don't value that young folks know, young Black and brown folks know exactly how to identify a situation and how to show up in it. Code switching is for our survival for Black and brown folks. It means that we are one way when we are in our own content, happy, lived experience, and then we are a whole nother way when we are in an organization where we clearly understand that they value professionalism. These are code words also, but like professionalism or right, or communication. They value certain ways of white dominant norms and practices, and we know that pushing on that will be harmful. An example of that would be my telephone voice, right? Like I'm a spoken word artist. This is the voice I use for my art, but my phone voice sounds a few octaves higher and is I use very sweet sounding words so that no one takes what I'm saying harmfully, because I know just showing up in my skin and my voice is harmful. Well, it's not harmful, but it's perceived as harmful. And our youth, I watch our youth go through multiple environments where they are switching in the moment. And I, for one, think that is a soft skill, a hard skill that should be applauded. But most folks look at it as trying to at least find success in a place where we know isn't made for us. Darlene, do you want to add to that?
No, that's great. I couldn't have said it better.
And so excited that so many people are like, yes, I want to do this. We are doing this again.
Exactly. August 1st.
And not because there was a lot of people who were like, I have to be on this panel, but because there's a lot of people who are like, I want to listen. So now we know there's a lot of folks to be on the panel. So that's really, really great too.
Fantastic. Should we go on to question 3?
We should.
Okay.
We should.
Well, this is a question for the people on the panel who identify as white or who identify not as a person of color. How do you practice solidarity? It's also, I nuanced this a little bit, for people who identify as white and for people who do not identify as Black. So people of color who do not identify as Black. How do you practice solidarity with Black folks in your life? How do you show up in solidarity with Black people in our society? What are some of your practices? Okay, I see Melanie, I see Gail, and I saw one other hand. Who is that? If you raise your hand on the controls, then we'll be able to tell that your hand is up. It stays up till we call on you. If you can find that button. I don't know where it is myself, but I know there's a hand raising button there. And I've already lost my way. That's why I want to see those hands. Gail, I know I said your name. You want to start? Gail?
Sure.
Unmute.
Can you hear me? My name is Gail Herod. I identify as white, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I guess, you know, the main things that I do to try and show my solidarity are to be there and listen openly. I mean, I speak out frequently, you know, in solidarity on issues that affect the Black community. You know, when I see injustices, I speak out. I'm not, you know, I'm not silent about it. When things like this happen, with the protests and everything that's been going down here recently, I mean, I reach out to my Black friends and loved ones, and I let them know that they matter to me, that I care about them, that I'm proud of them, that I love them, you know, because they need to hear it.
Thank you. Thanks, Gail. Let's see, I've lost track and I'm really sorry, but I'm going to call on Maura because we haven't heard from Maura. Thank you for putting your hand up. Unmute.
Thanks. You control my unmuting. Yeah, I even would step back one pace from that because I also started by thinking about listening. But one of the things that I really got from Ijeoma was not what she said, but with the white people. So she, her, hers, and I'm white. And with a lot of white people, they're not in proximity with any folks of color, and they're not in proximity with Black folks. And so of looking at where are my opportunities? What organizations can I join? What kinds of different things can I be part of? And sometimes it's by being an active participant. And sometimes it's also by being on Facebook pages and getting news feeds and things like that so that I can keep on informing myself. And then looking at not only listening and sort of seeing where are people, but also how can I follow their lead? Where do they want to focus me? And part of my life is about being an activist and also about donating money. And it's finding out where they think I should be taking action and then taking action. And then also bringing other white people along and suggesting to them that they can do that. And it's really trying to figure out where can we be doing things together. And what do I need to be doing with other white people, because that's what my job is. That's not what Black people's job is. Yeah. And so all of that, and just how do I back people and who am I going to back? It's not only organizations, but individuals that I'm going to back. And then with them, figuring out what does that mean in terms of how I'm there.
Thank you, Lauren. A nuance there is that you're in relationship with Black people that you follow. You basically find out from them what is necessary, which I have to say for many white people in this country is their first task, because most white people don't have authentic with Black people to be able to have those kinds of conversations. So that's your front load, is to build those relationships, right? Thank you.
And Darlene, I see in the participant list, like if we open up the participant list, the hands show up. And so I see 3 hands, and then Ricky waving their hand. And then on Dale's iPad, I don't know if you're still interested. So that would make 5 people. And do you think that that's good before we go? We also, somebody noted we missed question 2. We'll go back to that also.
Okay. Maybe we could take 2 more.
2 more? Okay.
Take 2 more, and then we'll go back to question 2.
We have not heard Melanie, Daniel, or Tommy.
Well, take 3 then.
Is it okay to take 3? Okay. Tommy, have we heard from you? I don't think so. Okay. So let's start with Melanie.
She, them, pronouns, and I identify as white. And I was just listening to Mara's response, and like she said a bunch of what I was going to say, which is great to hear that reinforced. Yeah, to stand in solidarity with my friends in color and fellow musicians of color, and even like watching through the protests right now, like learning where my voice belongs, getting behind voices of color, getting behind my friends, listening to what they're saying, amplifying what they're saying, whether it's, you know, on Facebook or in conversation or yeah. All of a sudden I got really nervous when I started talking. I wasn't nervous before. There's something that happened on Facebook a while ago, because even just like a couple of years ago, I wasn't as vocal. And I saw a post from a friend that said, like, and it was about police brutality. And the post said, you know, my white friends will like this or put a sad face, but my Black friends will share this. And that was something that, like, I was like, oh my gosh, I never share that stuff. I never spread that stuff within who I think would, you know, listen to it within my community, or not, they would see it within my, you know, just online. Yeah, learning where to listen and just learn and listen and just accrue information, and then learning where to speak and amplify. That's what I got right now.
Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you. Go ahead.
Because I've done it wrong. I've done it very wrong. I feel like I've done standing in solidarity. You know, I've been that white lady who introduces myself to a Black colleague and then immediately wants to talk about Two Dope Queens, or so like bringing race right into the conversation. And so like I've done that, and I've spoken and I've used tones that don't fit the moment with other white people, and yeah, it's all standing in solidarity also means being flexible and learning, like just being flexible and learning.
Yeah. Thank you also for naming how you've stepped in it. I think that's a good thing to model for other folks. You know, in reality, whiteness and white folks have this fear around saving face, whereas folks of color have a fear around saving actual like life. And I always ask folks to remember, is your fear imaginary, or will it really take your life? Yeah. And if the fear is imaginary, then that means that we have to move. Yeah. Thank you for naming that.
Thank you. It looks like Tommy's hand's up. Tommy?
It's going to take me a second. Sorry. One of the reasons why I'm here is because it's so uncomfortable for me to talk about this. And so I'm forcing myself to do it. Something that Melanie said just really resonated with me. There's so many things that I do wrong that I'm realizing through this process, and so many things that I do right when it comes to solidarity and being an ally to my friends of color. So one of the things that I do wrong, I think, is I always bring it up whenever I'm around one of my friends that's Black. I'll always be so quick to jump into a discussion because it's uncomfortable, and I want to, I guess, try to make it comfortable. I think when I'm by myself and I'm with other white people, like some of my family members that are racist, and this topic comes up, I have no problems standing up for what I think is right. But then when I'm around somebody of color that's a friend of mine, I'm always so quick to jump into this conversation because it's even more uncomfortable for me. So, sorry, my thoughts get kind of out of sorts. But I don't know. I'm hoping to learn how to make this not uncomfortable for myself and for my friends, because I really do care. You know, and I want to be a part of this solution, not a part of the problem. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Darlene, I had Daniel with his hand up, and it's now lowered, but your hand is still up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
In my heart of hearts. Hello, I'm Daniel. I'm a white person. I use he, him, his pronouns. 3 things that I'm trying to do presently to stand in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and people of color folks are, 1, because I'm white, I can kind of Trojan horse other white people and kind of make it feel like we're having a nice, safe conversation about race, and be like, but surprise, that's racist. Like, and so helping white folks get okay saying that we are in fact racist, and that we live in a white supremacist society, like just getting comfortable saying that is something I'm helping, is labor I'm trying to do so that Black and brown people don't have to do. And getting white people to understand that our responsibility in this is not just to like Black people in our hearts, it's to recognize that the oppression that Black and brown people are experiencing is at a systems level. So like, let's look at healthcare and employment and education and criminal justice, and like, let's take a bigger look at what racist means. It's not just that you want to call people the N-word. That's the most narrow definition. Another thing I'm doing is working to celebrate Blackness in my classroom. I'm a teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade. And so centering stories of people of color in the classroom feels really important to me. I think my first year teaching, I showed the Disney Cinderella that stars Whitney Houston and Brandy and Whoopi Goldberg and Paula Montalban. It's like the first time a lot of these kids had ever seen a Black princess or had seen a multiracial cast. And like, you don't have to always cast the prince as a white person. That's not how the story has to be told. And then the last thing that I'm trying to do is on social media, where Black friends are posting things and then white folks are so stupid in the comments. I'm trying to tag in when possible. Stupid is not a kind way to say that. Have not developed the language yet to have that conversation in a way that feels helpful. Sorry, when I'm not teaching, I don't always say it the nice teacher way. I'm trying to tag in when appropriate and be like, hey, it's summer. I have nothing but time. Can I take that one for you? Like, if this person is saying, like, if a friend posts like, I'm exhausted and I don't want to talk about this anymore, and somebody posts in the comments, what are you exhausted by? What do you not want to talk about? It's like, hello, I'm here to let you know that I'm exhausted and don't want to talk. Means I'm exhausted and don't want to talk. Here are a few resources that I've curated for you that you can look at if that would be helpful. Leave him alone. He doesn't want to talk. So those are just a few of the ways that I'm working to show solidarity currently.
Great ideas, great actions. Yes.
And thank you for naming that, because where were you when I was a kid, right? Like, where were you when I grew up in Issaquah, and there was no reflection of me except in my home. And where were teachers that had any bit of a bit of support or analysis? And it's so important at that stage while we're growing up, because I just want to share that I didn't fall in love with myself until college. And I have still not lived long enough to love myself as long as I hated myself. So it's very important that that happens early on. So thank you.
The truth is loud. Do you hear me? The truth is loud. The truth is loud. The truth is loud. The truth is loud.
Can you hear me?